Welcome to the next episode of Trailblazers, Charting Paths, Inspiring Destinies. Today, our trailblazer is Tashi Choedup, the pronounced they, she, is Trans-feminine Buddhist monastic, nunk, with 15 years of experience in human rights and community work. Tashi is a founding member of Telangana Hijra Intersex Transgender Samiti and queer Swabhimana Yatra. Their diverse commitments include serving as a member of Telangana State Government's Welfare Board for Transgender persons, working at the Queer Trans Wellness and Support Center, Uganda, Hyderabad, contributing to the creation of the Pride Place Transgender Persons Protection Cell with Telangana Police and continuous work with them, including being the National Coordinator India for the Foundation for the Preservation of Mahayana Tradition and Executive Committee member at the Anveshi Research Center for Women's Studies and also an advisory board member for Trans Equality Society and Society for Trans Men Action and Rights. They were a core group member of the National Ecumenical Forum for Gender and Sexual Minorities at the National Council of Churches of India and board member of Pain Relief and Palliative Care Society for several years. Tashi engages as a peer counselor with LGBTQIA+ folks. They are a fellow at Salzburg Global LGBT Forum. They are a student of Buddhist philosophy and psychology, and their primary areas of interest are community building, queer rights, mental health, religion, and faith and their intersections. Today, she speaks to us on understanding queer trans realities. Welcome, Tashi. The platform is yours.
Thank you for having me here with you all today. I was just watching the video that you played before. There are too many objectives in that for sure. I'm not sure if I have many of them, but certainly I think I could call myself a disruptor in most of the places that I've been there. I think my business intentionally or intentionally has been disrespecting whatever has existed in the form that exists, I think, currently. Today, of course, I'm going to talk to you all mostly about, in sense, I can tell you a lot of stories about queer people, trans people, the struggles we have and all of that. And that could probably invoke certain sympathies, on largely humanitarian grounds. But also, for me, as a trans person, queer person myself, I firmly believe that, a sympathy towards someone just as a fellow human being is good, but not enough. There's a lot more required for us to be able to have an engagement on an equal ground, I think, especially with people that who are very different from us, right? So in that sense, instead of telling those kinds of stories, rather I thought today we'll talk about something that is common to all of us, whether we are queer or not. I think this aspect that I want to engage with today with you all of us is something that we all, in many ways, an integral part of our lives every day, right? So before I get on to that, I think we'll begin with my, first question to you, all of you. When I say, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender people, what comes to your mind? Yeah, basically what comes to your mind when you say queer people, trans people, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender persons? What comes to your mind? Could be anything. You don't need to be politically correct. You don't need to be, polite and nice. Also because it's anonymous, it kind of saves that at least. We could be honest with each other. Okay, different. Another gender, okay, fair enough. Respect, but how does one's mind work? But the first thing, interestingly, the first word that someone has put in is different, right? Essentially the other way of, okay, it's one's own identity, sure, yes, but our identities are not just our identities, no? They are constantly interacting with the rest of the world. And the rest of the world is interacting with us through our identities. So they are much layered and much complex. They're very living things in that sense. They're not really static in that sense. But I would rather pick up another different. Yes, sure. So I'll rather pick up the, word different, I think, at this point of time. I think saying different is rather kind of, being strange, sure. Another word probably to another synonym to different. So when you basically say different or when you say strange, essentially one more way of putting it often is, normal or not normal. So when you say queer people, trans people, LGBT people in general, the idea that comes to one's head is that, oh, they're not normal or they're not normal like us. We might not be too impolite and say abnormal or any other kind of negative words, but rather we might feel immediately that, oh, they are not normal like us. Whoever us might be, right? They are not normal. And this notion of normal, saying something is normal and not normal, right? I mean, it is not something only we do with queer people, trans people. It's something that we do in our everyday life all the time with everything. Like so many things, we very easily by default categorize things as normal and not normal. And we do it very instinctively. We do it as a very muscle memory, right? Kind of doesn't take much effort to kind of do this categorization of what is normal and not normal. So I thought we will rather explore this notion of what is normal and why do we think a certain thing is not normal, or why do we think a certain thing is normal, and what does it really mean when we say something is normal and not normal. Let's try and look at that today. I think I'll quickly, share with you and go through with you this exploration of what is normal. And then we can kind of open the floor for question and answers for a longer period of time. Yeah. So when we are exploring normal, my immediate, of course, first question comes to you. The other next question, immediate question comes to you. Dr. Subhashini, if you can prompt it. What does a normal life mean to you? And when I mean, what does a normal life mean to you? Generally, if you're thinking of a normal life, how does it look like? You could look at your own life. You can look at anyone else's life. But what does normal life look like? Right from beginning, from the childhood, what does it look like? What are children supposed to do? Other than crying and eating and, of course, being cute and all of that. What does children do? Once they little bit. Wow, it would be nice if actually they don't have any expectations. But I'm sure that's not the world we are living in. So, yeah, enjoy education. Okay. Good health and opportunities. Okay. That was quick. From children, education to right away to marry, right? Learn values. Okay. Become man and woman alpha. Okay. Essentially leaders. Love, caring family. Okay. We'll begin with the first step of it. Let's say education, right? Let's say children are supposed to go to school and get educated. Whether they enjoy it or not, that's a different story. Let's not get into that, I think. But nonetheless, they are supposed to go to school and get educated. Once they finish the school, they're supposed to continue their education into higher education. Let's quickly jump into the next question and see, what is a normal education? It's not a tricky question, honestly. Because especially if you're from Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, it must be very clear what is a normal education. What kind of education or what course is normal? Okay, master's is more like a grading level. I'm asking studying what is normal, basically. You can't go and study anything and everything. That's not really okay. You're saying master's in specified subject. What subjects are most normal subjects to be studied? Professional courses. And what are the professional courses? I'm mostly talking about after school. School is generally basic and common for everyone. So I'm mostly talking about after school. What kind of education? After school, after our +2, what kind of education? What subjects are the most common subjects, or what courses are the most common courses that we are ought to study? Would anyone disagree with me if I say the most normal course or the most acceptable course to go and study is medicine and engineering, especially if you come from the Telugu states, Telangana and Andhra Pradesh? Not every kind of education is really normal education, right? There are particular kind of educations that are okay and acceptable. Not all kinds of education are not, for example, I did BA. I did BA in economics and political science. And most of my family thinks I really actually did not study anything. I studied social sciences, but it really doesn't count as education even today. So medicine and engineering mostly. And if medicine and engineering is not something that works, then you go to BSc. Then if that doesn't work, then you go to BCom. If that doesn't work, then you go to BA, right? There is a graded hierarchy of what is the most normal education, or what is the acceptable. When I say normal, it also really means what is more acceptable, what is more respectable in terms of education, which essentially means not every kind of education is okay. So what comes after education? Generally, I mean, there's not a question popping in here for that, but what comes after education? You can put it in chat. Okay, you finished your education, you finished a desirable education, master's, post-graduation, or, engineering, medicine. What comes after that? Earnings, okay, basically meaning career. And after that, basically marriage comes, right? Whether earnings come first or marriage comes first, that's something we can debate around, I think. But, job followed by marriage is what one would say. But let's assume for a moment if someone is not really, getting a job, they're in their 30s and they are not in a job, or they don't have a stable career. Would they not really get married? Would people not ask them not get married? Would be interesting to think about, right? But okay, now we are at the stage of marriage after education. Let's say, what is normal marriage? Not again, all kinds of marriages are normal marriages. So what is a normal marriage? What constitutes a normal marriage? We do have a lot of shows these days also on Netflix, isn't it? Around marriages, especially Indian marriages. What marriages constitute normal marriages? Okay, arranged marriages by parents. Sure. What kind of arranged marriages? Not all kinds of marriages are arranged, no? Every kind of marriage is not arranged. There are particular kind of man and woman getting married. Okay, that's one kind of marriage that is arranged. Are marriages arranged between all kinds of men and women? Okay, respect, trust, friendship. Well, in an ideal world, yes, they all should take priority than anything else. But, what kind of men and women are arranged in marriage? I'm not asking what you think is right or wrong. I'm simply asking what works in the world in general. Marriage to a person whom you like is ideally what should happen. But that really is not something that happens often, no? Would marriages happen among all kinds of men and women? Right now, I'm just talking about men and women per se, let's say. In our world, every day, the most normal marriages are marriages that happen between same caste, same class, same religion, same geography for that matter. So not all kinds of marriages are really normal marriages, right? A particular specific kind of marriages that are acceptable, that are really normal in that sense, that are, popularly accepted. Arranged marriages, but arranged marriages between the same caste, between the same class, between same religion. Every kind of marriage is really normal. We probably would not have movies like Two States in the film industry making about, marriage between people from different geographies. And somehow that's a story to tell, because that's a very unusual story apparently in our country, right? For various reasons. So the particular kind of marriages that are, normal. And right after marriages, what happens? Someone is asking me, don't you think today there's a growing number of couples who come from different backgrounds, religions? Yes, it might look like it, thanks to popular media and culture and everything, but unfortunately, if you really look at it, especially even in Telangana, if you look at it in past few years, people who are married outside different castes and religions, there were so many honor killings by their very own families, right? So it is really met with a lot of resistance. I'm not saying no one is getting married among us different castes and religions, but it is often met with a lot of resistance. It's not the most normal marriage. It's not the most acceptable marriage. Okay, kids and more kids, that's appropriate. Well, right after marriage, what comes? Kids and more kids, sure. If no kids, people choose to not have kids, oh, that's absolutely unthinkable. I mean, like, why would you not, want to have kids? Like, how can you not be a parent, right? And if someone is basically having difficulty having kids, there will be possibly everyone, neighbors to vegetable vendors on the street. Everyone is possibly giving advices, what to do, which hospital to go to, which fertility clinic to go to, or which Baba to go to, all of that. So this is a very set path in place, particular kind of education, particular kind of marriage, right after the marriage, kids. This is supposedly a sequence in life that is everyone is supposed to follow on. And somehow we all think we all also do it, because we want to do it. That's an idea that we all also basically more comfortable to while we do these things, I think, in life. But I would want to pick up one particular thing today among these normal things in life, these normal milestones in life, education, marriage. I would rather pick up marriage to see how is marriage really normal, which we agree, right? It's a very normal thing. A lot of people get married every day, and a lot of people get married in different scenarios, but nonetheless, they get married. Let me ask you this. Yes, in our families, our parents want us to get married mostly, more or less, right? And probably our friends also want us to get married. Do you think anyone else wants us to get married more than our, parents and friends and even extended family and neighbors? So do you think anyone other than, parents and other individuals, could be extended family, could be, anyone other than these individuals in our lives, would anyone else want us to get married? No one would? Okay, that's okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. That's how it feels like, at least. Okay, society, community wants us to get married, sure. Other than individuals, there's the largest society out there that also encourages, or rather, looks at people who are not married differently. There are, families choosing all of that, yes, sure. I'm going to ask you, frame it differently. In a sense, individuals, yes. Society, yes. Society, we look at as an institution that wants to get us married, right? In a similar fashion, can you think of any other institutions that want us to get married? Any other entities? Not individuals per se, but entities like institutions that want us to get married. What entities want us to get married? Someone said society, right? Like society, are there any other institutions that want us to get married? It's difficult to think of, right? It really doesn't come up. Okay, Dr. Jayabharati, any idea why you think government wants us to get married? Often I don't hear that. Not in the first right away. Others can also think about it. I mean, Dr. Jayabharati just said that, government wants us to get married. It might sound strange, actually. Someone also said worship places. Sure, we'll get to that. But of course, why would government want us to get married? It's interesting, right? When you think about it, often it doesn't come to our mind. In our mind, we always think, in our whatever limited reality, we always think it is us who wants to get married, or it is basically, what I was saying is that government wants us to get married, right? And there are programs and schemes where people are actually actively encouraged by government to get married. Why does government want us to get married, honestly? I mean, it doesn't make sense to think about government being interested in individuals, marriage per se. But when you actually think about marriage is simply not about two people getting married. Yes, it is about two people getting married and together, but it is also largely about many other aspects of an individual's life. For example, let's think about, what does government do? What is the government's job? To build nation, essentially to produce children, isn't it, Dr. Jayabharati? But let's think about it. What does government do? Government makes policies and welfare programs and schemes and all kinds of stuff for, the citizens. But to think for a moment, it doesn't make welfare programs and policies and schemes for everyone or all kinds of citizens randomly. Most of the welfare programs, when you think about government, it makes for people who are situated in a particular family setup, a wife, husband, and a child. Whether you think about a ration card, whether you think about Aadhaar card, any kind of social entitlements, any kind of welfare programs and schemes, the individuals are always situated and placed in a familial structure of a wife, husband, and children. And it is for this particular unit, government makes all kinds of programs, welfare schemes, and so on and so forth, right? And government needs this kind of unit. Why does government needs this kind of unit? Well, government, like many other institutions, is also a patriarchal setup and would also want to rely on a patriarchal setup where, a man is head of the family. Remember, I'm not saying, husband is the head of the family. I'm rather saying man specifically head of the family, wife and children. And because men are also supposed to discipline children and women in the family, keep them in line, basically. So one of it is that the government wants to curate the entire framework and functioning around this family. But also the other, when you think about it, when people coming together and getting married, among many things that happen is also the transaction of wealth. That a lot of movable and immovable property gets exchanged, rather flows from, brides to groom's side. So when that happens, this money and wealth has to flow somewhere else. It has to go somewhere else from, the married couple to elsewhere. And it often goes from the men in the family, which is a husband or the father, to children. And in most cases, male children largely. I mean, of course, in urban spaces, you might find exceptions, but that's not necessarily the case in the larger society out there, right? Imagine when people don't get married. The entire inheritance law, whether it is Hindu Marriage Act, whether it is all the other, particular marriage acts that actually operate or regulate the inheritance, what happens to the inheritance becomes a very tricky affair. Where does the money go to? If people are not getting married, if there are not children, biological children per se, what happens to these resources, right? And the other immediate thing to think about is that if people get married, when people get married and they form this family unit, essentially meaning you're forming a support system to take care of each other. No matter how much you crib and complain and fight and all of that, nonetheless, the idea is that children are supposed to take care of elderly parents. Husband is supposed to take care of rest of the family, so on and so forth. Imagine when people are not getting married, but people are getting old, people are getting, dependent, and the responsibility falls on the state to take care of the elderly citizens. Of course, even now we have departments within the government that look up to the welfare of the senior citizens, but that is mostly like ensuring that children are taking care of their elderly parents, right? And some pensions and all of that. Imagine when marriage is not a norm and people are not getting married, you have a bunch of, growing elderly population without a familial structure and system. And the state is supposed to take care of the welfare of these people. But for, instead of doing that, it is easy for state to say to get married and have these, families, instead of putting in all, resources from the state side, from a government side to build systems in place that are actually taking care of individuals, irrespective of whether they have families or not. It's easy to encourage people getting married. So government really, really wants people get married because it really serves its larger purposes, whether in terms of functioning, whether it in terms of, negating the welfare of citizens from its responsibilities. But that's one institute, right? One institute that wants you get married. The other immediate institute that also wants you get married, like someone said, not places of worship, but religion as an institution that wants you get married. For various reasons, various belief systems, but religion as an institution also wants to get married because that's the easiest way of, having people born in their religion, building a community around for various reasons. But that's one more institute. But there's also other bigger institutes similar like government that wants to get married. Any guesses on that? Similar institution, as large as government possibly, also wants to get married. Any similar institution that comes to your mind like government that wants us to get married? I mean, it all falls under the religion. I'm saying anything other than government, anything other than religion that we can think of that wants us to get married. Law also comes under the government, right? I mean, law is generally framed and implemented and executed by the government and state. How about, I'm throwing it out, think about it. How about capitalism as a structure, capitalism as an institution also wants us to get married? Just like government does. Just like religion does. Okay, tell me this. Again, you can type in chat. What does capitalism require? The corporate structures, the big companies that we see in, let's say, high-tech city or the Uppal industrial area, doesn't matter. The software or the hardware industries, whatever the industries, what does companies require primarily to function? People, right? They need human resource. People coming day in and out, working basically. So what do people need to go to office every day in the morning? Motivation, will, and all of that, yes. But materially, what do people need to go to office every day in the morning? Well, income comes when you go to office. But to go in the morning, to get up in the morning and go, transport, sure. Before you get out of the house, you need breakfast, right? You need food to eat. You need clothes ironed. You need domestic work in the house to be done for you to be able to go to office. So who does the domestic work in the house? I mean, one can be in a very progressive liberal world and say everyone does it. But really not, no? So intend to go, food, apparel, yes. So who does? So women in the household do all the domestic work. The unpaid, undervalued or not at all valued domestic work, yes. Specifically whether mother, wives or domestic help. Essentially, one or the other woman in the house performs the domestic labor. And often when I say this in many groups, most of the men, I mean, no offense, always get a bit uncomfortable and say that, no, we also help. But that's the whole point, right? men help, they think they help because they don't think it is their work to begin with. It is the wife's work, mother's work, domestic help's work. So we help. But it is not our work. Although it is our household, it is not our work. So mostly women do this labor, unpaid and undervalued domestic labor, for people to be able to get up and on time go to work actually. If you think about it for a moment, long ago, there's a movie in Telugu film industry called Adivaram Adavallaku Selavu. Which sounds like a very funny thing, like what is the big deal about it? But imagine even today, if all the women in a city like Hyderabad decide that they don't want to take I'm not stretching as far as a holiday. I'm simply saying if they want to wake up an hour late, a lot of things in the city are not going to be on time. A lot of companies and a lot of workplaces are not going to be like the everyday. If simply women one day decide, hey, I just want to wake up 1 hour late today, right? So the corporates also need a particular kind of setup for the human resource to be constantly available. What kind? Husband, wife, and children, where the wife is basically providing the domestic work, taking care of children and the household. And of course, even if the wife is going out and working, nonetheless, they have to still do all of this work, right? All of these chores need to be done. While this requirement is important, this is what the companies also kind of eventually, when they make products and produce all kinds of stuff, when you look out in Hyderabad and all the advertisements more or less targeted to, particular families, wife, husband, and children, whether it is schools, whether it is houses, whether it is kitchen appliances, they sell the stuff to a particular kind of, framework and system, or a particular kind of individual situated in a particular context. And that is largely situated in a married family context, right? So corporates also want us to get married, right? Now, of course, you have maternity leaves and paternity leaves and crush and childcare and all of that in last 10 years. That probably slightly changed. But nonetheless, they do also want us to get married. Why am I saying government, religion, and corporates want us to get married? Because I want us to think for a moment that it is not just us who wants us to get married, right? What is supposedly so normal, it is not simply so normal, right? For example, let's say, in workplaces, in modern workplaces, if a man, dresses up to a point, they can be metrosexual, or if a woman who dresses up to a point can be fashionable. But when you cross a line and dress up little more, a man dresses up little more, then they become feminine. When a woman dresses up, little more, then they become either sluttish or not deserving respect, right? So when basically, in all of this context, there's a thin line we are always threading on. And all the time, there is constantly entities around us trying to curate our life in a particular sense that is resembling some sense of normality that is acceptable to larger mainstream society, right? In that sense, where do we when we say marriage is normal or certain kind of education is normal, let's take for a moment and see, do we all breathe? Do we all inhale and exhale? We do it very comfortably, right? And is someone giving any reward if we are breathing, if you are inhaling and exhaling? Or is someone giving any kind of punishment if we don't inhale and exhale? Not really, right? We do it because there's no reward, there's no punishment. Nonetheless, we do it. That possibly one can say this inhaling and exhaling is the most natural and most normal thing one can say. But anything else what we call normal is really not normal in that sense. Also we often say normal is natural, natural is normal. But what we construct and what we think to be normal is really never natural. Because there's an entire system and structure around it that is constantly moderating and creating this idea of normalcy. Imagine for a moment, if we do not have government policies and schemes for which we need to get married, for insurance, for bank accounts, for bank loans, so taxation, so on and so forth. Imagine if there are not corporate companies that are constantly telling, this works better, that works better, selling this, selling that, for a unit of family, husband, wife, and child. Imagine There's not this entire structure and system that is constantly telling us what to do, what not to do, what is the desirable life, what is not a desirable life. Would we all still think of life in a similar way as we do now? Would we all desire, aspire, in our life, similar things that we do today? I'm not saying it has to be anything radically different. I'm simply saying imagine. I'm not saying it would be really possible, not possible to have all of these things. I'm not saying that. But in case, if we don't have this kind of system and structure that we are living in, would we really aspire and desire a similar kind of life? And that's where the larger problem and question about queer people and trans people comes. The issue is not about simply, or rather only about who queer people and trans people are sleeping with, having sex with, or what dress they are wearing, how they are dressing up, and what kind of work they are doing. That's never really the only issue in that sense. The larger issue at the core is queer people, trans people, because of the kind of lives we live, because the kind of realities we inhabit, we don't fit into the structures and systems that the world has built around itself. In terms of marriage, in terms of family, in terms of, all kinds of things. We simply don't fit in. And when you have a bunch of people who don't fit into the existing structure and system, and a structure and system that constantly tries to exert control, wants to control lives, is often easily threatened. That there's a bunch of people that I'm not able to control. There's a bunch of people living life outside this, control, outside this system and structure. And that is very threatening often, right? And that's where one can't wrap heads around, what are queer people and trans people? Who are they? And why do they live these kind of lives that we can't wrap our heads around, right? For most often when I say immediately trans people, the people that come to your head is Hijra people who are begging at the signals or doing sex work in the night, right? In public spots mostly. And Hijra community has been existing for a long time. At least within Hyderabad, it has a 400 years of history. Under the patronage of Nizam kings at one point of time, of course, till this point, right? But in all of that, Hijra community has existed without marriages. They existed as a group of people coming together, taking care of each other, living in whatever kind of difficulties and struggles, but lived outside the entire structure and system, which seems to be the only way for people to exist and live. Generally, when we think what is normal, and when we say queer people and trans people are not really normal, which essentially meaning that they are not normal like us, which meaning they are not getting married, they are not having children, they are not, getting educated in a certain way. They basically don't fit our idea of normal. So for us, if we want to really think about how do we want to engage with queer people and trans people, it's always good to begin, in our everyday lives, when we call and often use, this is normal, this is not normal. It would be nice and interesting just for us as individuals, I think, if not for anyone else. Why am I saying this is not normal? Or why am I saying this is normal? What makes this normal and what doesn't make this normal? Instead of by default accepting that this is normal and not normal, a little bit of investigation around it probably helps, right? So in light of that, when we really think about queer people and trans people as not normal, I want us to think about what is the normal that I'm really talking about here. And that probably changes our perspective. How do we think about queer people and trans people, right? In that sense, really none of us very normal in that sense. All of us have quirks in life. We all are constantly treading the line of trying to be normal because the society is constantly demanding us to be normal and we are constantly performing to be normal. We don't want to be failing to be normal because if we fail to be normal, then there's constantly our peers, extended family, neighbors, community members, pointing fingers, calling names, all kinds of things. And it doesn't need to be queer and trans. As simple as someone, let's say, does not want to get married. They're not trans, they're not queer, they're not lesbian, they're not gay, anything. But they simply say they don't want to get married. They are not interested in marriage. But imagine how the world treats them because that is not normal. The world does not perceive and look at it as normal. And unless we really kind of reflect on this and start questioning this, not just for sake of queer people, trans people, but for sake of everyone, because we all are imprisoned in this idea of normal. We all are imprisoned in this idea of normal. And the only way to get out of it is that we have to start really investigating and inquiring what is normal. I'll stop at this point of time. Any questions you have, of course, might have a lot of questions around queer people, trans people. Of course, we can talk about it. I did not intentionally share with you, basics around who are lesbian people, who are gay people, trans people, because you could Google and get that information, right? But rather for me, I want us to think differently about our lives and also about lives of people who are different from us.